Closing costs here on Long Island are some of the highest in all of the United States. So I wanted to make a video today to walk you through exactly what you need to know as a buyer when it comes to buying a home and your closing costs and why they are so high here. So we're gonna go line by line through an actual CD from a recent closing that I had. This way you guys can get a real life scenario on what to look for. My name is Anthony Vita with Real Broker and I'm excited to take you through. So before we hop into the CD, I wanna just give you the basic deal terms of this deal so you guys understand where it was, okay? So the purchase price was $690 with a total loan amount of $655. The interest rate was about 6.5% and the property was located in Nassau County. Now, the total closing costs in this deal were just shy of $25,000. Let's pop into the CD so we could take a look at each item here so we can get an idea of what the closing costs were made up of. Now, not every single CD is as easy to read as this one, I will say. So I had to go through a couple of recent deals to find you guys one that's a little bit more clear, because some of the way they do math on these things is not as clear as day. But let's take a look here. So on this deal here, we've got a total, we got a loan cost first, which is up top, which is common. So total loan costs on this deal are about $5,646. Now that's going to include any points that the buyer is paying to the lender, any underwriting fees there, any processing fees, doc fees, and any total bank fees. Now I also added a title fee into this cost because it was down at the bottom and it kind of made sense to go into the loan details. I'll explain at the end. But basically you've got about $5,646 in total loan costs here. Next up, we're gonna look at the title fees involved. Now again, this was a $655,000 loan amount. Now the total title policy itself was just under $2,500. It's $2,495. Now on top of those involved in that title fee, you're also gonna have your survey fees. That's obviously gonna vary pretty big depending on the size of the property and where it's located, etc. This one was pretty cheap, it was just under $700. You're also gonna have any processing fees to actually run the title, closing fees, and a couple of the miscellaneous fees when it comes to title. Now total there, you've got just over $5,000 in title fees on this deal. Next up, we're gonna have some other costs to close. So for that right now, this is heavily made up of the mortgage tax here. So the mortgage tax in New York is 0.75% of the loan amount, just under a point, right? So on top of the mortgage tax, you're gonna have some other recording fees there, but total you're gonna have $6,744, which was on this deal. Now the mortgage tax made up over $5,000 of that, so that's really the bulk of the cost, but adding in the recording fees, you're getting close to that $7,000 amount, even on a loan amount as low as $655. Next up, we're gonna look at some prepaid costs when it comes to actually buying a home. So there's a couple things here, but the first thing is most of the time, I'm rarely not seeing this now, it's on almost every single file, where the insurance company or the bank or both is gonna require you to actually pay your insurance premium up front. Now, if this is a cash deal, of course, the bank isn't gonna be making you do it, but your insurance company may still require that you buy your first year up front. Now, secondly, if you do have a bank on there, 99% of the time, they're gonna wanna hold escrow for a full year of insurance. Now, the insurance policy on this deal was just over $2,000. So the clients had to pay a full year of insurance, which came to about $2,000 in closing costs. Now, on top of that, they also had some prepaid interest. So this one gets a little tricky here, but basically, if you take the total interest of the monthly payment and you divide it by 30 days, that's gonna come out to, for example, on this deal, it came out to about $140 per day over 31 days of that month that they were actually paying interest on. Because they closed midway through the month, on this file it was the 18th, they had to prepay interest for the amount of days that are actually left in that month. So they had to pay $140 per day from the 18th to the 1st of the next month. Now in this case, it comes out to about $1,600 and change. Now total on this file, if you add that into the insurance, the client had to pay about $3,600 and change in prepaid cost in their closing cost. Now on top of that, they also had to escrow about 5 months of property taxes. So this is going to depend on when you actually close and when your local municipality actually collects their taxes. For example, here they had to pay 5 months because the town collects in January and also in July, and we close somewhere in that middle range. So depending on how much time you have left to prepay before they actually collect, the bank may require you to pay those months up front and hold that in escrow. 99% of the time this is going to be the case. On this deal it was 5 months. So if the total taxes for the year, for example, were about $12,000 and change, they had almost $5,000 they had to pay because you divide it by that 12 months in the period and take it by that how many months you have to pay. So here they had to escrow about $3,644 total in taxes. Now it's important to note that if you do sell your home, you are gonna get those monies back. Now, big question that I always get with this, when you escrow those months in taxes, the bank is still gonna require you to have in your mortgage payment it's going to include your insurance and your taxes. So it's not like you're paying it up front and then your mortgage payment's gonna be less until the next taxes are due. Your total mortgage payment is still going to include your monthly taxes and monthly insurance when you take those two and divide them by 12, plus your principal and interest of the loan. So although you're putting that up front, the bank's actually gonna hold on to it in their own reserves. So if you go to sell your property a couple of years down the line and they don't use up that escrow, that money is still due back to you. Now on Long Island, especially where taxes are really high and insurance premiums are high, I've seen escrow amounts total between $20,000 to $35,000 depending on what the policy is and how much the taxes are. So that's gonna be a hefty check they don't wanna forget about. Typically, after you sell your property, finally the deed's recorded, in about a month or so, they're actually gonna mail you back a check once that loan is paid off for the amount of money in escrow. Now, if we add up all of these costs, we take our loan cost total, we take our title fees, we take our recording fees, our mortgage tax, our escrow, our insurance, this file had just shy of $25,000 in closing costs. Now that was on a total purchase of just under $700,000 in Nassau County. So to give you an idea, if you want to just do your math on that, but it's almost like another down payment here in closing costs. So this is a part of the sticker shock that I really want buyers to be aware of when they're thinking about making a move here on Long Island. Now there's a couple of other closing costs that are not involved in this file, but I do want to mention it because they are pretty common here. The first thing is going to be the New York State mansion tax. So that's going to be 1% of your purchase price on any property that has a sale price above $1 million. If you're at $999,999, you will not pay a mansion tax. But once you hit that $1 million price point, that's a mansion tax paid by the buyer. So if it's $1 million, that's $10,000 in addition to these costs you're seeing here. The other thing I want to mention is the higher the insurance is, the higher the taxes are, and the more months you're going to have to actually escrow depending on when you close, the more that closing cost is going to be. Now you'd eventually get those monies back when you go to sell, but up front you're going to be laying out that cash. Same thing goes with title. Once you get up to that higher price point, most of these premiums and these insurances are actually going to go up as well as the fees. Okay. Now on top of that, what I didn't mention here specifically is the attorney fee. On this file, it was just shy of $1,000. Now it is something to be aware of here, depending on what price range you're at or what county you're in. Most of the closing costs for the attorney, their total attorney fee is going to be between about $1,500 to $2,500. I've seen them as high as $5,000 to $6,000, depending on the type of deal involved. Again, this is residential, not commercial. If it's commercial, it might be a little bit higher. Now, the last closing cost I do want to bring to your attention as we wrap this video up is the Peconic Bay tax. So if you're looking for property on the east end of Suffolk County, the Peconic Bay tax is probably going to be something you're going to have to pay. So that's going to be a total of 2.5% of your total purchase price due from the buyer at the closing table. For example, if it's $1 million house, in addition to all these costs that we're looking at, and then if it's $1 million, you'd have the mansion tax, you're also gonna pay 2.5% to the Peconic Bay tax fund. So that could be upwards of $25,000. If it's $2 million, you'd be at $50,000 just in that. There are some exemptions that you can take a look at if you go to the website. It breaks it down really nicely. But if you are looking on Shelter Island, town of Southold, Riverhead, East Hampton, Southampton, all of these townships are going to require you to pay the Peconic Bay tax. So in addition to all these costs, you may have another 2.5%. All right, everybody. Well, that wraps up today's video on closing costs here on Long Island. I hope this serves as a really good video to actually understand what makes up those closing costs and why they're so high. Now, if you do want to comment below, just comment closing, and I'd be happy to just give you a quick walkthrough in a little bit more depth on what you can expect depending on your price range, your location, specific town you're looking for, of what you can expect in closing costs for your sale. This way you know how to properly budget when it comes to your purchase. So again, my name is Anthony with Real Broker, and I'm excited to serve you. Comment, mention all my information's in the description, and we'll go from there. Thank you so much.